Undercover Boss ignored for 45 minutes, then stands up and freezes the whole restaurant. The lunch rush at Savory and Company was in full swing when Daniel Chen walked through the glass doors wearing a navy jacket with "Quick Deliver" stitched across the back. His usual $1,000 suits were replaced by worn jeans and scuffed sneakers. A baseball cap sat low on his head, shadowing his face. Nobody looked up. Daniel had built this restaurant from nothing 12 years ago. What started as a single storefront with 6 tables had grown into a chain of 43 locations across the state. His face had been in business magazines, on local news segments, even on a billboard downtown. But today, dressed like every other delivery driver in the city, he was invisible. And that was exactly what he wanted. "Excuse me," Daniel said, approaching the host stand where a young woman named Brittany, according to her name tag, was scrolling through her phone. "Table for one?" She didn't look up. "We're busy. You can wait." "How long?" "I don't know. Just wait." No smile. No eye contact. Just a dismissive wave toward the crowded waiting area where 3 other people stood checking their watches. Daniel nodded and stepped aside. He pulled out his phone and pretended to check messages while watching everything unfold around him. 2 servers passed by carrying trays, laughing about something one of them saw on social media. A manager, tall, slick-back hair, name tag reading, Marcus, leaned against the bar, arms crossed, scanning the room like a security guard instead of someone responsible for customer experience. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. A couple walked in, dressed in business attire. The woman's jewelry caught the light. Brittany's head snapped up immediately. "Good afternoon! Table for 2? Right this way." She grabbed 2 menus and led them straight to a booth by the window. The best seat in the house. Daniel watched the couple who had been waiting before him exchange confused glances. They'd been there 15 minutes. The other man, wearing a construction vest, just shook his head and stared at the floor. 15 minutes turned to 20. Then 30. Daniel's jaw tightened, but he stayed quiet. He'd come here to see the truth, not to interfere. Not yet. Finally, a server with pink-streaked hair named Jenna approached the waiting area. "How many?" "Just me," Daniel said. She sighed like he'd asked her to run a marathon. "Follow me." She led him to a small table near the kitchen doors, the worst spot in the restaurant. The kind of table they reserved for people they hoped would eat quickly and leave. Every time the kitchen doors swung open, a blast of heat and the clatter of dishes hit him directly. Jenna dropped a menu on the table without a word and walked away. Daniel sat down and waited. And waited. Servers passed by his table at least a dozen times. Some made eye contact and kept walking. Others looked right through him as if the table was empty. He watched Jenna take orders from 2 other tables, laugh with a group of college students, and refill waters for a family with young kids. She never came back to him. 20 minutes at the table. Nobody brought water. Nobody asked if he was ready to order. At the 40-minute mark, Daniel caught Jenna's eye as she walked past. "Excuse me, could I? I'll be right with you," she said without stopping. She wasn't. Daniel glanced around the restaurant. The couple who'd been seated immediately after walking in were already finishing their meal. The construction worker who'd been waiting before Daniel had finally left, shaking his head in frustration on his way out the door. But here, in the corner by the kitchen, Daniel sat with an unopened menu and an empty table. He could feel the anger building in his chest, but he forced it down. This wasn't about his ego. This was about understanding what was really happening in his own business when nobody knew he was watching. At 45 minutes, Marcus, the manager, strolled past Daniel's table. He looked directly at him, made full eye contact, and kept walking toward the bar where he started chatting with another employee about weekend plans. That was it. Daniel slowly closed the menu and stood up. Every part of him wanted to walk straight to Marcus, introduce himself, and demand answers. His business, his reputation, his values, all of it was being destroyed right in front of him by people who were supposed to represent everything Savory and Company stood for. But he didn't. Instead, Daniel walked to the door, pushed it open, and stepped out into the afternoon sunlight. The noise of the restaurant faded behind him as the door swung shut. He stood on the sidewalk for a moment, his hands in his pockets, watching people walk by. Couples laughing. Families heading to the park. The world kept moving like nothing had happened. But something had happened. Daniel had just been treated like he didn't matter in his own restaurant. And if it happened to him, how many others had experienced the same thing? How many customers had walked out frustrated, vowing never to return? How many people had he lost without ever knowing why? He pulled out his phone and opened his calendar. Then he scrolled through the list of all 43 restaurant locations. His fingers hovered over the screen for a moment before he started typing. Schedule, undercover visits. Multiple locations. No advance notice. He wasn't going to confront anyone. Not yet. Because if this was happening here, in his flagship downtown location, then he needed to know how deep the problem really went. Daniel walked to his car parked 2 blocks away and sat in the driver's seat. He didn't start the engine. He just sat there, staring at the steering wheel, replaying everything he just witnessed. 45 minutes. Ignored. Dismissed. Invisible. And nobody cared. Not the host. Not the server. Not the manager. Daniel took a deep breath and started the car. He had built Savory and Company on one simple principle: every customer matters. It didn't matter what they wore, how much money they had, or what they looked like. Everyone deserved respect, quality food, and genuine hospitality. Somewhere along the way, that principle had been forgotten. And Daniel was going to find out why. Daniel sat in his car across the street from the downtown restaurant, the engine off, watching through the large windows as the dinner shift began. The warm glow from inside made it look inviting, almost perfect. From out here, you never know what was happening behind those walls. His phone buzzed. It was his wife, Lauren. Working late again? Dinner's ready. Daniel stared at the text for a moment, then typed back. Something came up. Be home soon. He couldn't tell her yet. Not until he understood what he was dealing with. The last customers were leaving now, and he could see servers cleaning tables, stacking chairs. Marcus, the manager, stood near the register counting money. Everything looked normal. Routine. Like any other successful restaurant closing down for the night. But Daniel couldn't shake what he'd felt sitting at that table. The humiliation. The complete disregard. And the worst part? Nobody had even realized they were doing anything wrong. It was just normal to them. He opened his laptop and pulled up the company's internal system. As founder and CEO, he had access to everything: employee schedules, inventory reports, customer feedback, financial data. Things that regional managers and location supervisors could see, but with one critical difference. Daniel had a master code that let him access raw, unfiltered information before it went through management review. He typed in the downtown location's ID number and waited. The customer satisfaction scores popped up first. 42 out of 5 stars. Trending positive. Daniel's eyebrows furrowed. That couldn't be right. He scrolled down to the individual reviews from the past month. Great food, excellent service. Best meal I've had in weeks. Staff was so attentive. Will definitely be back. 5 stars. But then he noticed something. He clicked on the date filter and changed it from approved reviews to all reviews. The screen refreshed. Suddenly, dozens of other comments appeared. Comments he'd never seen before. Waited 30 minutes and nobody took my order. Left hungry and angry. The staff completely ignored us. Worst experience ever. They only care about you if you look like you have money. Disgusting. I've given this place 3 chances. Never again. Daniel's grip on the laptop tightened. These reviews had been filtered out. Removed. Hidden from the main dashboard that corporate used to evaluate location performance. He clicked on another location, the suburban branch 15 miles north. Same thing. The public-facing scores were high, but the hidden reviews told a completely different story. His heart pounded as he went through location after location. The pattern was everywhere. Not in every restaurant, but in enough of them that it couldn't be a coincidence. Someone was manipulating the data. Daniel closed the laptop and leaned back in his seat, staring up at the roof of his car. He thought about calling an emergency meeting, bringing in the regional managers, demanding explanations, firing people on the spot. But then what? They'd apologize. They'd promise to do better. They'd blame it on a few bad employees, claim they had no idea it was happening, and within a month, everything would go back to the way it was. No. He needed more than excuses. He needed proof. He needed to see it with his own eyes, in multiple locations, so there was no denying the truth. Daniel pulled up his phone and opened a secure scheduling app that only executives had access to. It was designed for surprise audits, visits where corporate could show up unannounced to check food quality, cleanliness, safety protocols. But Daniel wasn't interested in checking the kitchens. He typed in a new audit schedule. Day 2, Suburban Branch, North Side. Day 3, Late Night Location, Westfield. Day 4, Corporate Office Review. Day 6, Return to Downtown. He marked each visit as confidential and assigned them under a fake auditor name. Nobody would know he was coming. Nobody would have time to prepare, to clean up their act, to put on a show. He would see exactly what his customers saw. Daniel started the car and pulled away from the curb, glancing one last time at the restaurant in his rearview mirror. The lights inside were dimming now as the last employees locked up for the night. 45 minutes. That's how long he'd been invisible in his own restaurant. And the worst part wasn't the wait. It was the realization that this had been happening for weeks, maybe months, and he'd had no idea. Not because the information wasn't there, but because someone had made sure he'd never see it. Daniel's jaw tightened as he drove through the empty streets. Tomorrow, he'd go to another location. And the next day, another. He'd keep going until he knew exactly how deep this went and who was responsible. And when he finally had the whole truth, then he'd stand up. The North Side location was different from downtown. It sat in a strip mall between a yoga studio and a phone repair shop, catering to families and local workers rather than the business lunch crowd. Daniel had opened this branch 4 years ago, and it had always been one of the steadier performers. Consistent sales, decent reviews, no major complaints. At least, that's what the reports said. Daniel walked in at 11:30 a.m., right before the lunch rush, wearing the same delivery jacket and cap. Different restaurant, same disguise. A teenage host named Tyler greeted him immediately. "Hey, man. Just you?" "Yeah." "Cool. Give me one SEC." Tyler grabbed a menu and led Daniel to a booth near the window. Better than yesterday, Daniel thought. At least he was acknowledged. "Your server will be right with you," Tyler said, and walked back to the host's stand. Daniel sat down and looked around. The decor was identical to downtown. Same wooden tables, same framed photos of fresh ingredients on the walls, same soft lighting. But the energy felt different. Calmer. Less chaotic. A server approached within 3 minutes. Her name tag read Nina. "Hi there. Can I start you off with something to drink?" "Just water, thanks." "You got it." She smiled and walked away. Daniel felt a small sense of relief. Maybe this location was different. Maybe the problem really was isolated to downtown. But then he noticed something. Nina returned with his water and took his order, a simple burger and fries. She was polite, efficient, professional. But as soon as she left his table, her demeanor changed completely. She walked straight to a booth where a well-dressed couple sat with shopping bags from expensive stores piled beside them. Her smile grew wider, her voice more animated. "How is everything tasting? Can I get you anything else? More bread? Another bottle of wine?" The couple barely acknowledged her, but Nina hovered, attentive and eager. Meanwhile, 2 tables over, an elderly man in a faded jacket raised his hand, clearly trying to get someone's attention. Nina glanced at him, then turned back to the wealthy couple. The old man lowered his hand and went back to waiting. Daniel's stomach twisted. 10 minutes later, his burger arrived. Nina set it down quickly. "Enjoy," she said, and immediately turned toward the couple's table again. Daniel ate slowly, watching. The pattern became clearer with every passing minute. A young mother with 2 kids asked for ketchup. It took 12 minutes for anyone to bring it. A construction worker requested a refill on his soda. Nina walked past him 3 times before finally stopping. But the couple with the shopping bags? They had everything they needed before they even asked for it. Daniel finished his meal and watched Nina process the checks. When the construction worker paid, she barely looked at him, just ran his card and handed back the receipt. When the couple paid, she thanked them profusely, told them about a new menu item coming next week, and handed them a card for a discount on their next visit. 2 different experiences. Same restaurant. Same server. Daniel left cash on the table and walked out without saying a word. He sat in his car and pulled out his laptop again, accessing the employee portal. He searched for Nina's profile, hired 8 months ago, transferred from another location, reports directly to the regional manager. Then he saw the name. Regional Manager, Marcus Delgado. The same Marcus from downtown. The same man who had looked Daniel in the eye yesterday and walked away. Daniel clicked through the organizational chart. Marcus oversaw 6 locations, including downtown and north side. He pulled up the customer satisfaction data for all 6. Every single one had the same pattern: glowing public reviews, hidden complaints buried in the system. Daniel's pulse quickened. He opened another file, this one showing employee training records. Every location under Marcus's supervision had completed the same customer priority training module 3 months ago. He clicked on the training materials. The first slide made his blood run cold. Maximize revenue per table, focus on high-value customers. The next slide showed a breakdown of customer profiles, what they wore, how they spoke, what they ordered. It taught servers how to identify who was worth their time and who wasn't. This wasn't about bad employees. This was policy. Someone had created a training program that taught his staff to discriminate, to judge, to prioritize profit over people. And Marcus had rolled it out across every location he controlled. Daniel slammed the laptop shut. He sat there, breathing hard, his hands shaking. He thought about calling Marcus right now, confronting him, demanding answers. But he stopped himself. Because if Marcus had done this across 6 locations, who else was doing the same thing? How many other regional managers had adopted this system? How many employees had been trained to treat people this way? Daniel needed to go deeper. He pulled up his schedule. Tomorrow night, he'd visit the late-night location in Westfield. A smaller spot, fewer employees, less oversight. If the rot had spread there too, then he'd know this wasn't just Marcus. It was the entire company. The Westfield location was the smallest in the chain, just 12 tables, a short counter, and a kitchen barely big enough for 2 cooks. Daniel had bought the property 5 years ago because it reminded him of where he'd started, a humble neighborhood spot where people came for comfort food and conversation. It was 9:47 p.m., and when Daniel pushed through the door, only 3 tables were occupied, and the overhead lights had been dimmed for the evening shift. A handwritten sign near the register read, "We close at 11 p.m. Kitchen closes at 10:30 p.m. A young woman behind the counter looked up from her phone. She couldn't have been more than 22, with tired eyes and her hair pulled back in a messy bun. Her name tag said Rachel. "Hi," she said, her voice flat. "Sit anywhere." Daniel took a seat at the counter. It gave him a clear view of the kitchen and the few remaining customers, a truck driver nursing a coffee, a teenage couple sharing fries, and a woman in scrubs who looked like she just finished a double shift. Rachel walked over with a menu and a glass of water. "Kitchen's closing soon, so if you want hot food, you should order now. I'll take the meatloaf special." "Okay," she wrote it down and turned toward the kitchen, then paused. You want that with mashed potatoes or fries? Mashed potatoes. She nodded and disappeared through the swinging door. Daniel sat quietly, listening to the hum of the refrigerator and the low murmur of conversation from the teenage couple. The truck driver got up, left a few bills on the table, and walked out without a word. 10 minutes later, Rachel returned with his plate. She set it down gently, more carefully than Nina had yesterday, more respectfully than Jenna had 2 days ago. Need anything else? She asked. I'm good. Thanks. She nodded and started wiping down the counter, her movements slow and deliberate. Daniel took a bite of the meatloaf. It was good, better than it had any right to be at this hour. Quiet night? Daniel asked. Rachel glanced up, surprised he'd spoken. Yeah. Weeknights are always slow. We get maybe 20 people after 8-inch. You work here long? About a year. She sprayed cleaner on the counter and wiped in small circles. It's fine. Pays the bills. Daniel nodded and took another bite. He wasn't sure how to steer the conversation without seeming suspicious, but he didn't need to. Rachel kept talking. It used to be better, though, she said quietly, almost to herself. How so? She hesitated, glancing toward the kitchen like she was checking if anyone was listening. The cook was busy scrubbing a pan, headphones in, oblivious. Rachel lowered her voice. The owner, well, not the real owner, but the guy who runs things around here, he came in a few months ago with this new system. Said we needed to be smarter about who we spend time on. Daniel's fork stopped halfway to his mouth. What do you mean? Like Rachel looked uncomfortable now, like she regretted saying anything. He said we should focus on customers who are going to tip well or order a lot. He didn't say it exactly like that, but that's what he meant. And if someone doesn't look like they'll tip well? Rachel bit her lip. Then we're supposed to be efficient. Get them in and out. Don't waste time chatting or refilling drinks too much. She laughed bitterly. He called it optimizing customer flow. Daniel set his fork down. How do you feel about that? She looked at him for a long moment, like she was trying to decide if he was safe to talk to. Finally, she sighed. I hate it, she admitted. I got into this job because I like people. I like talking to them, hearing their stories. But now I'm supposed to look at someone and decide in 5 seconds if they're worth my energy. She shook her head. Last week, this older guy came in. He was wearing clothes that had seen better days, and he ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, just soup and bread. My manager told me to focus on a group of businessmen instead. So I did. Her voice cracked slightly. But when I finally went to check on the old guy, he'd left a $20 tip on a $7 check. He wrote on the receipt, "Thank you for letting me sit somewhere warm." Rachel's eyes welled up. I didn't even talk to him. I barely looked at him. And he still thanked me. The silence stretched between them. I think about him every day, Rachel whispered. And I wonder how many other people I've ignored because someone told me they didn't matter. Daniel's chest tightened. He wanted to tell her the truth, that he was the owner, that this wasn't her fault, that he was going to fix this. But he couldn't. Not yet. You seem like you care, Daniel said gently. That's more than a lot of people. Rachel wiped her eyes quickly and forced a smile. Yeah, well, caring doesn't pay the bills. She picked up his empty plate. You want dessert? No, I'm good. Daniel left a $50 tip on a $15 check. As he walked to his car, he realized something that made him feel sick. The system wasn't just breaking customers. It was breaking his employees too. Daniel arrived at headquarters before sunrise. The building was empty except for the security guard at the front desk, who barely looked up as Daniel swiped his badge and headed to the elevators. He didn't go to his executive office on the top floor. Instead, he went to the 3rd floor, the data management department where customer feedback, employee records, and operational reports were processed before being sent up the chain. Daniel had access to everything, but he never needed to come down here before. He'd trusted the reports that landed on his desk every week, trusted the summaries his senior managers provided, trusted that the systems he'd put in place were working. That trust was gone now. He unlocked the main database terminal and sat down in the dim light of the computer screen. His fingers moved quickly across the keyboard, pulling up raw data feeds from every location. First, he checked the review filtering system. Every customer review came through an automated screening process before being published to the company's main dashboard. The system was supposed to flag spam, duplicate reviews, and offensive language. Nothing more. But when Daniel examined the filtering parameters, he found something else. Someone had added custom rules. Rule number 47, auto-remove reviews containing keywords. Ignored, waited, rude, disrespectful, never coming back. Rule number 51, suppress reviews with ratings below 3 stars from customers flagged as low engagement. Rule number 63, prioritize reviews from customers with order totals above $50. Daniel's hands trembled as he scrolled through page after page of hidden reviews. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all filtered out before anyone in leadership ever saw them. He pulled up the audit log to see who had created these rules. Modified by M. Delgado, Regional Manager. Approved by K. Thornton, VP of Operations. Daniel froze. Karen Thornton. He'd hired her 3 years ago to oversee regional operations. She was efficient, results-driven, always hitting her numbers. He'd promoted her twice, trusted her with more responsibility each time. And she'd been covering this up. He opened her email archive, another feature of his master access, and searched for correspondence with Marcus. The first email was from 4 months ago. From Marcus Delgado. To Karen Thornton. Subject, Customer Satisfaction Strategy. Karen, attached is the new training module I discussed. It's showing a 23% increase in average ticket sales at my locations. The key is teaching staff to focus energy where it matters most. I've also implemented review filtering to remove noise from customers who weren't going to be repeat business anyway. Dashboard scores are up across the board. Let me know if you want to roll this out company-wide. Marcus. Daniel scrolled to Karen's response. From Karen Thornton. To Marcus Delgado. Subject, Customer Satisfaction Strategy. Marcus, impressive results. I'm approving the training module for all regions under your supervision. Let's monitor the numbers for another quarter before considering company-wide implementation. Keep the review filtering quiet. No need to involve Daniel unless the board asks questions. He's focused on expansion right now. K. Daniel's vision blurred. He read the email again, making sure he hadn't misunderstood. Keep it quiet. No need to involve Daniel. His own VP had deliberately kept him in the dark. She'd seen the training program, understood exactly what it was teaching employees, and approved it anyway, because the numbers looked good. He opened another folder, Financial Reports. Marcus's 6 locations had increased revenue by 18% over the past 3 months. Customer complaints, at least the ones that made it through the filters, were down. On paper, everything looked perfect. But Daniel knew the truth now. The revenue increase wasn't from better service or higher quality. It was from squeezing more money out of customers who mattered, while pushing everyone else out the door as quickly as possible. He pulled up the employee turnover rates. Across Marcus's locations, turnover had jumped to 47% in the last 6 months, nearly double the company average. People like Rachel were burning out, quitting, or getting fired for not meeting the new efficiency standards. Daniel closed the computer and sat in the darkness, his head in his hands. This wasn't just a few bad managers making poor decisions. This was a calculated strategy, approved at the executive level, designed to boost short-term profits while destroying everything he'd built. And the worst part? It had been working. The board had praised Karen at the last meeting for operational improvements. Investors were happy with the growth numbers. Nobody was asking questions because nobody knew what was really happening. Except Daniel. And he'd only found out by accident, by being ignored in his own restaurant. He pulled out his phone and looked at his schedule. Tomorrow was day 5, he'd planned to use it reviewing more data. But now he knew enough. It was time to go back to where this started. The downtown location. Saturday night. The busiest shift of the week. He'd give them one more chance. And if nothing had changed, then on day 7, he'd stand up and end this for good. Daniel walked out of the office as the sun began to rise, leaving the evidence on the screen behind him. He had everything he needed. Now he just needed the proof that this wasn't going to fix itself. Saturday night at Savory and Company was always the busiest shift of the week. Reservations booked solid from 6 p.m. to 10 p.m., tables turning every 90 minutes, servers moving at double speed. It was the shift where the restaurant made its money, where reputations were built, where everything had to run perfectly. Daniel stood across the street at 6:45 p.m., watching the crowd through the windows. Couples dressed for date nights. Families celebrating birthdays. Groups of friends laughing over appetizers. From outside, it looked like a thriving business, exactly what he'd envisioned when he'd opened the doors 12 years ago. But he knew better now. He adjusted his delivery jacket and pulled the cap lower over his eyes. Same disguise. Same restaurant. But this time, he knew exactly what he was walking into. Daniel crossed the street and pushed through the door. The noise hit him immediately, laughter, clinking glasses, music playing softly overhead. The host's stand was packed with people waiting for tables. Brittany was there again, moving through the crowd with a tablet, calling out names. She looked stressed, efficient, completely focused. Daniel waited for a gap in the chaos and approached. "Table for one?" She glanced at him for half a second. 45-minute wait. "Name?" "David." She typed it in without looking up. "We'll text you when it's ready." Daniel nodded and stepped back into the crowd. He found a spot near the wall where he could watch everything unfold. The pattern started immediately. A family of 4 walked in, parents in casual clothes, 2 kids in soccer uniforms still dirty from a game. Brittany told them the wait was an hour. 2 minutes later, a couple in designer clothes arrived. Brittany smiled warmly. "Oh, let me check if we have anything available." She tapped her tablet, made a call to the back, and within 5 minutes, they were seated. The family with the soccer kids was still waiting. Daniel's jaw clenched, but he stayed quiet. He pulled out his phone and pretended to scroll, but his eyes never left the host's stand. 20 minutes passed. His phone buzzed with a text. "Your table is ready. Please check in at the host's stand." Daniel walked up. Brittany glanced at her tablet. "David? Follow me." She led him through the crowded dining room, past tables filled with people enjoying their meals, past servers carrying trays piled high with food. And then she stopped at the same table he'd sat at 6 days ago. The small table near the kitchen doors. The worst seat in the house. "Your server will be right with you," Brittany said, already turning away. Daniel sat down and looked around. The table next to him, a couple who'd arrived after him, had already been given water, bread, and menus. Their server was chatting with them, recommending wine pairings. His table was empty except for a single menu. 5 minutes passed. Then 10. Daniel raised his hand as a server walked by. Not Jenna this time, someone new. The server glanced at him and kept walking. 15 minutes. He made eye contact with another server. She nodded and said, "Someone will be right with you," then disappeared into the kitchen. 20 minutes. Daniel watched Marcus walk through the dining room, checking on tables, laughing with guests at the prime booths near the windows. Marcus looked polished, confident, like a manager who had everything under control. He passed Daniel's table twice. Both times he looked directly at him. Both times he said nothing. At the 25-minute mark, a server finally approached. A young guy named Tyler, the same host from the North Side location. He must have transferred here recently. "Sorry for the wait, man. Can I get you something to drink?" "Just water." "Cool. I'll be right back." Tyler returned with water and took Daniel's order, the same burger he'd had at Northside. Tyler seemed rushed, distracted, constantly looking over his shoulder like someone was watching him. You okay? Daniel asked. Tyler hesitated. Yeah, it's just busy tonight. My manager's been on everyone about table times. We're supposed to turn tables faster. He lowered his voice. Especially certain tables. Certain tables? Tyler's eyes darted toward Marcus, who was standing near the bar. I shouldn't have said that. I'll get your order in. He hurried away before Daniel could respond. The food arrived 20 minutes later. Tyler set it down quickly. Enjoy, no eye contact. No follow-up. Just efficiency. Daniel ate slowly, watching the restaurant operate around him. The couple next to him was on their third round of drinks, their server checking in every few minutes. A family across the room had their meals comped after a minor complaint about temperature. A group at the window was given free dessert just for celebrating a birthday. But at Daniel's table? Nothing. No refills offered. No check-ins. Tyler passed by 3 times without stopping. It was 8:47 p.m., and when Daniel finished his meal, he'd been in the restaurant for 2 hours. His burger had taken 45 minutes to arrive, and he'd been ignored for most of the evening. Nothing had changed. 6 days of investigation. 4 locations visited. Emails uncovered. Policies exposed. And yet, here in the flagship restaurant, on the busiest night of the week, the same disrespect was happening all over again. Daniel set his napkin on the table and took a slow breath. He'd given them every chance. He'd stayed quiet, stayed invisible, hoping someone would prove him wrong. They hadn't. Tomorrow night, he'd come back one final time. And then he'd stop being invisible. Sunday evening. 7:15 p.m., and Daniel walked through the doors of the downtown location for the last time in disguise. The dinner rush was already underway, every table filled, the sound of conversation and laughter bouncing off the walls. He'd thought about this moment for 6 days. Rehearsed what he'd say, how he'd say it. But now, standing in the doorway of the restaurant he'd built from nothing, all he felt was sadness. Brittany looked up from the host stand. Her eyes passed over him without recognition. Wait time is about an hour. I'll wait, Daniel said. She nodded and turned back to her tablet. Daniel found his spot against the wall and watched. The same couples being prioritized. The same families being made to wait. The same judgment calls being made based on appearance, clothing, perceived wealth. 30 minutes passed before his name was called. Brittany led him through the dining room, and Daniel already knew where they were going. The table by the kitchen doors. Your server will be with you shortly, Brittany said, setting down a menu. Daniel sat and folded his hands on the table. He wasn't angry anymore. He was just tired. Tired of watching his values being ignored. Tired of seeing people treated like they didn't matter. 10 minutes passed. No water. No server. Across the room, Marcus stood near the bar, scrolling through his phone. He glanced up occasionally, surveying the dining room like a king observing his kingdom. 15 minutes. A server passed Daniel's table carrying a tray of drinks. She didn't make eye contact. 20 minutes. Tyler appeared, the same server from last night. He looked exhausted, running between tables, his shirt wrinkled and stained. Hey, sorry. What can I get you? Just water for now, Daniel said calmly. Tyler nodded and disappeared. He returned 3 minutes later with water, set it down, and pulled out his notepad. Ready to order? Not yet, Daniel said. Can I ask you something first? Tyler hesitated. I guess? Do you like working here? The question clearly caught him off guard. Tyler glanced around nervously. It's a job. That's not what I asked? Tyler's shoulders sagged. Look, man, I don't know what you want me to say. I've got 8 other tables and my manager's timing me. Can I just take your order? Daniel looked at him, really looked at him. Tyler couldn't have been more than 25. Dark circles under his eyes. Hands shaking slightly. This job was eating him alive. I'll take the burger. Medium. Fries. Got it. Tyler scribbled it down and hurried away. Daniel sat back and waited. Not just for his food. For what came next? 35 minutes passed before the burger arrived. Tyler set it down without a word and vanished back into the chaos. Daniel took one bite. Then he set down his fork and looked around the restaurant one last time. He saw a young mother trying to flag down a server while her toddler cried. No one stopped. He saw an elderly couple sitting with empty water glasses, waiting patiently for a refill that never came. He saw Marcus laugh with a table of businessmen, pouring them expensive wine, while Tyler sprinted past carrying 4 plates at once. Daniel stood up. The movement was slow, deliberate. He wasn't in a hurry. He walked calmly toward the center of the dining room, past tables of people eating and talking, past servers carrying trays. And then he stopped. Right in the middle of the floor. "Excuse me," Daniel said, his voice clear and steady. "Can I have the manager, please?" The conversations around him began to fade. People looked up from their meals. Servers froze mid-step. Marcus turned from the bar, irritation flashing across his face. He walked over with a practiced smile. "Is there a problem?" Daniel met his eyes. "Yes. There is." Marcus's smile tightened. "What seems to be the issue?" "The issue," Daniel said, his voice carrying across the now silent dining room, "is that I've been a customer here 3 times in the past week. And each time, I've been ignored, dismissed, and treated like I don't matter." Marcus glanced at Daniel's delivery jacket, his worn jeans. "Sir, I'm sure there's been a misunderstanding." "There's no misunderstanding," Daniel interrupted. "I sat at that table for 45 minutes on my first visit. Nobody brought water. Nobody took my order. Nobody cared." The restaurant was completely silent now. Every eye was on them. Marcus's jaw tightened. "I apologize if your experience wasn't." "I'm not finished," Daniel said quietly. "I came back yesterday. Same treatment. And tonight? Same thing. So I need to ask you something, Marcus." Marcus blinked. "How do you know my name?" Daniel reached up and pulled off his cap. Then he unzipped the delivery jacket and let it fall to the floor. Underneath, he wore a shirt with the Savory and Company logo, the original design from 12 years ago, the one only founding employees had. "Because," Daniel said, his voice steady, "I'm Daniel Chen. I own this restaurant. I own all 43 of them." The color drained from Marcus's face. "And you just failed the test you didn't know you were taking." The video had gone viral by Monday morning. Someone in the restaurant had recorded the moment Daniel revealed his identity. Marcus's face going pale, the stunned silence, the whispers erupting as Daniel walked calmly to the manager's office with Marcus trailing behind. By sunrise, it had 500,000 views. By noon, it was trending nationwide. Undercover Boss exposes discrimination in his own restaurant chain. CEO goes incognito, discovers shocking truth about his staff. Restaurant owner fires manager on the spot after being ignored for 45 minutes. But Daniel wasn't thinking about the headlines. He was standing in the downtown location at 6 a.m., watching a crew remove the furniture. The restaurant was closed. A sign on the door read, "Temporarily closed for staff retraining. We're sorry. We're doing better." Inside, the dining room was empty except for Karen Thornton, his VP of Operations, who stood near the kitchen doors with her arms crossed. "You really shut down the flagship," she said, her voice tight. "On a Monday. Do you know how much revenue we're losing?" Daniel turned to face her. "Do you know how many customers we already lost?" Karen said nothing. "I found your emails, Karen. All of them. The training program. The review filtering. The strategy you approved to maximize profit by ignoring people who didn't look wealthy enough." Her face remained expressionless. "Those programs increased revenue by 18% and destroyed everything this company stands for. Daniel, you built this business to succeed. I helped you succeed. Numbers don't lie. Neither do people." Daniel pulled out his phone and opened the hidden reviews, the hundreds of complaints that had been filtered out. "These are the numbers you didn't want me to see. Real people. Real pain. Real damage. He handed her the phone. She scrolled through silently, her jaw tight. I watched a server named Rachel cry because she ignored an old man who left her a $20 tip on a $7 check. Daniel continued. I watched employees burn out trying to meet impossible standards. I watched my own managers look customers in the eye and decide they weren't worth basic human decency. Karen handed back the phone. So what now? You fire everyone? Burn it all down? No, Daniel said. I fix it. He walked to the center of the empty dining room. Marcus is gone. You know that already. But he wasn't alone. I've identified 11 other managers across 8 regions who implemented similar programs. They're all gone too. Karen's eyes widened. 11 managers? Daniel, you can't just. I already did. As of this morning. He turned to face her. And Karen, I'm accepting your resignation. She stared at him. You're firing me? I'm giving you the option to resign. You approved this. You hid it from me. You prioritized short-term profit over the values I built this company on. His voice softened. You're good at your job, Karen. But you forgot why we're in this business in the first place. For a long moment, Karen said nothing. Then she nodded slowly. Fine. I'll have my resignation letter on your desk by end of day. She walked toward the exit, then paused at the door. For what it's worth. I thought I was helping. I know, Daniel said. That's the saddest part. The door closed behind her. 2 weeks later. Daniel stood in front of every employee in the company. Over 800 people gathered across video conference screens from all 43 locations. Some looked nervous. Some looked angry. Most just looked confused. 2 weeks ago, Daniel began. I went undercover in my own restaurants. I dressed like a delivery driver and sat down as a customer. And I was ignored. Disrespected. Treated like I didn't matter. He paused, letting the weight of his words settle. But here's the thing, it wasn't about me. It was about every single person who walked through our doors and felt invisible. The single mom working 2 jobs. The elderly couple on a fixed income. The teenager saving up for college. They all deserved better. And we failed them. Faces on the screen shifted uncomfortably. I didn't build this company to squeeze every dollar out of people. I built it because I believe everyone, deserves a seat at the table and respect when they sit down. Daniel's voice grew firm. So here's what's changing. Effective immediately, we're eliminating all customer priority training. We're removing review filters. Every complaint will be seen and addressed. We're hiring back employees who were let go for not meeting quotas that never should have existed. He took a breath. And I'm instituting a new policy. I will personally visit locations unannounced. Not as a CEO. As a customer. If you're doing right by people, you have nothing to worry about. But if you're not. He let the sentence hang. A hand raised on one of the screens. It was Tyler. Yes? Mr. Chin. What if we make a mistake? Daniel smiled, the first real smile in 2 weeks. Then you apologize, learn, and do better. That's all I've ever asked. 3 months later. The downtown location reopened with a new manager, new staff training, and a wall dedicated to customer stories, real reviews, unfiltered, the good and the bad. Revenue dipped initially. Some investors complained. But slowly, something else happened. Customers started coming back. Real reviews, 5 stars earned through genuine care, began flooding in. Employees stopped quitting. The culture began to heal. One evening, Daniel visited the downtown location. Not undercover this time. Just as himself. Rachel, transferred from the Westfield location, greeted him at the door. Mr. Chin. Table for one? Please. She led him to a booth by the window, the best seat in the house. And for the first time in months, Daniel sat down in his own restaurant and felt like he was home.